You felt something strange in your body recently, perhaps a sore throat when you woke up, a tooth that hurt while you ate, or a fever that made you reach for a thermometer. You probably waited for it to pass, took something from the medicine cabinet, or decided that if it became worse, a doctor would eventually tell you what was happening. A prehistoric human had none of those certainties. The same pain could begin quietly in the morning and end with someone unable to stand beside the fire that night, while every person around them watched the body fail without knowing what was attacking it. They could see the fever, the swelling, the coughing, and the weakness, but they could not see the enemy responsible. So what diseases did ancient humans actually die from? That question is harder to answer than it seems, because a broken bone can survive for thousands of years, while the lungs, blood, intestines, and organs destroyed by disease usually disappear with the body. Someone could die after days of severe illness and leave behind a skeleton that looked almost untouched. But the killers did not erase every clue. Some diseases changed bones or teeth, while others left microscopic remains or fragments of genetic material sealed inside dental pulp and skeletal tissue. Modern researchers can recover those traces and compare them with the conditions in which ancient people lived. In one large study, scientists examined ancient remains from more than 1,300 people across 37,000 years of Eurasian history, uncovering widespread traces of bacteria, viruses, and parasites. But finding a pathogen inside a body does not automatically prove that it caused that person's death. The evidence is incomplete, yet it reveals something unsettling. The diseases killing prehistoric humans were not necessarily strange monsters from a vanished world. Many began with symptoms you might ignore today, and the first could enter through something as small as a damaged tooth, a shallow cut, or a wound that appeared to be healing. That wound might have looked harmless at first. A stone blade slipped across the hand, an animal tooth broke the skin, or a damaged tooth began throbbing after an ordinary meal, yet nothing seemed serious enough to stop the person from walking, eating, or working beside the fire. For a while, the body might even appear to be recovering, because the bleeding stopped and the skin began closing, while beneath the surface, bacteria continued multiplying where nobody could see them. Then everything changed. The wound became hot and swollen, fever rose, breathing accelerated, and someone who appeared strong that morning could become confused, weak, and unable to stand before nightfall. This was the first major killer, sepsis. It happened when an infection escaped its original location and triggered a dangerous reaction throughout the body, damaging organs far from the cut, bite, burn, or infected tooth where it began. The original injury was only the entrance, while the real disease was the invisible chain reaction that followed. Ancient humans may have cleaned wounds, protected them, or applied plants that occasionally helped, but once sepsis advanced, they had no reliable way to reverse it. What modern medicine may interrupt with antibiotics and urgent treatment could end beside a prehistoric fire before anyone understood that the danger was no longer in the wound. And the next diseases needed no broken skin at all, because they entered with every breath, every drink, and every meal. If you want the real dangers of prehistoric life explained through evidence rather than myths, subscribe to the channel, because here we investigate the diseases, discoveries, and survival problems that shaped human life long before the modern world existed. The next threat could enter without a wound, because ancient humans had to bring it into their bodies simply to stay alive. It could arrive with the air inside a crowded shelter, where cold weather kept people close together while smoke irritated the lungs and one persistent cough exposed everyone nearby. The second major killer was pneumonia and other severe respiratory infections. What began as coughing and fever could move deeper into the lungs, filling them with inflammation and fluid until every breath required more strength than the sick person had left. Without antibiotics, oxygen, or respiratory support, the group could provide warmth, water, and care. But sometimes they could do little more than watch. Then the danger moved from the lungs to the stomach. The third major killer was intestinal infection, carried through contaminated water. Spoiled food, dirty hands, or waste left too close to places where people ate and drank. Vomiting and diarrhea could drain water and essential salts from the body, turning an invisible contamination into fatal dehydration. Especially for children and people already weakened by hunger or another illness. Some organisms did not kill quickly at all. Parasites could enter through soil, water, plants, or undercooked meat, then remain inside the body while stealing nutrients, damaging tissue, causing blood loss, and weakening the person over time. Preserved ancient feces called coprolites have allowed researchers to identify parasite eggs and reconstruct how deeply these infections were embedded in past human life. But these diseases were difficult to trace because they often vanished after death. The next killers left something more precise behind. Hidden inside ancient teeth and bones, fragments of their own DNA. For thousands of years, these invisible killers seemed to vanish with the people they infected. But some of them left fragments of themselves sealed inside teeth and bones, waiting for modern researchers to find them. Those fragments revealed diseases that did not simply strike once and disappear, but could remain inside a person, spread through a settlement, and return across generations. The fourth major killer was tuberculosis. It could begin with a cough that refused to leave, followed by fever, chest pain, weight loss, and a weakness that slowly made ordinary work impossible. As people began living closer together in permanent communities, shared air gave the infection more opportunities to move between bodies, while long-lasting cases could spread beyond the lungs and damage the spine or other bones. Evidence from ancient skeletons, molecular markers, and pathogen DNA confirms that tuberculosis was present in prehistoric populations, including early farming communities from roughly 9,000 years ago. But ancient teeth preserved another, more sudden threat. The fifth major killer was plague. DNA from Yersinia pestis has been recovered from Neolithic and Bronze Age humans, proving that plague infected prehistoric communities thousands of years before the medieval Black Death. Some early strains differed from the later flea-adapted form, but they were already capable of spreading repeatedly through human populations. In warmer regions, another enemy entered through the bite of a mosquito. The sixth major killer was malaria, which could bring repeated cycles of fever, chills, anemia, weakness, and organ damage, with children facing some of the greatest danger. Ancient parasite genomes recovered from human remains show that malaria-causing species have followed and shaped human populations for thousands of years. Tuberculosis moved through breath, plague through infected populations and environments, and malaria through insects. But the final disease needed no outside invader. It began when the body's own cells stopped following the rules. The final disease did not enter through a wound, contaminated water, shared air, or an insect bite, because the threat began inside the body itself. The seventh major killer was cancer. It is often described as a disease of modern life. But one of the oldest known malignant tumors in the human evolutionary record was found in a foot bone from a hominin who lived around 1.7 million years ago in South Africa. Researchers identified it as osteosarcoma, a destructive form of bone cancer that still affects humans today. That individual lived long before industrial pollution, processed food, cigarettes, or any other modern exposure commonly associated with cancer. The disease was already possible because cancer begins with something far older than civilization, cells dividing, accumulating errors, and eventually growing beyond the body's control. Cancer appears uncommon in ancient remains, but the archaeological record cannot tell us exactly how rare it truly was. Most tumors develop in soft organs that decay after death. Relatively few reach the skeleton. Only a small fraction of prehistoric bodies survived for researchers to examine, and fewer people reached the ages when many cancers become more common. So, the diseases that killed prehistoric humans were not creatures from a completely different biological world. They were infections that escaped into the blood, illnesses that filled the lungs, contamination that emptied the body of water, parasites that consumed it slowly, pathogens that traveled through breath, settlements, and insects, and cancers that began within their own cells. If you want more evidence-based investigations into how prehistoric humans actually lived and died, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments which ancient danger we should examine next. The next time you notice a cough, feel a tooth begin to hurt, or take a tablet and continue with your day, remember what that ordinary moment would have meant before anyone could see a microbe, name a disease, or stop it from spreading. The ancient killers did not disappear. We simply became better at finding them before they finished the job.